Hello, welcome to Family Storytime. I'm Miss Amalia from Maplewood Memorial Library. So happy that you could tune in today. Let's get started. Clap, clap, clap your hands with me. Clap your hands and let me see. Clap your hands with me and roll. Roll, roll, roll your hands with me. Roll your hands and let me see. Roll your hands with me and pat, 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 pat your knees with me. Pat your knees and let me see. Pat your knees with me and clap, 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 clap your hands with me. Clap your hands and let me see. Clap your hands with me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hi, hello, and how are you? How are you? How are you? Hi, hello, and how are you? Now it's story time. February is Black History Month, which means we take time to honor and to learn about Black American contributions, legacy, and history, and also to reflect on the present. Today we're going to share a few books that highlight moments in Black history from a child's perspective. But first, let's do our hand washing song like we always do. Tops and bottoms, in between, rinse your hands off really good, dry them well just like you should, clean, 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 clean. Okay, our first book is called Take a Picture of Me, James Van Der Zee, by Andrea L. Loney, illustrated by Keith Mallett. And James Van Der Zee was born on June 29th, 1886. He went on to become a photographer during the Harlem Renaissance, and his work actually spanned more than 80 years and included subjects such as Jean-Michel Basquiat, Lou Rawls, and Muhammad Ali. And you can actually help me with this book. When I say, take a picture of me, I want you to say, James Van Der Zee. So let's practice. Take a picture of me, James Van Der Zee. Perfect. So here he is under the trees. Deep in the heart of Lenox, Massachusetts, in a white frame house nestled between his aunt's home and his grandparents' house, lived a boy named James Van Der Zee. James was the oldest boy of 3 sons and 2 daughters. At the Van Der Zees, the children learned about music and art and kindness too. James played the violin and the piano. He also liked to paint, but drawing people was hard. He could never get their expressions right. James wanted to share the beauty he saw in his heart. One day, a man came to the Van Der Zee home with a huge contraption called a camera. It was the only camera in Lenox. Click! Boom! The man took the family's picture and left. Later, he returned with a photograph that perfectly captured everyone's smiles and their mother's sweet gaze. Now this is how you make great pictures, thought James. I want a camera. In a magazine, James found a contest where the first prize was a camera. To win, he had to sell the most sachets of ladies' perfume. After months of selling sachets, James won! He won! But the camera came in parts, and the parts didn't fit together, so James had to start over again. He weeded his neighbor's garden for a quarter a day until he saved $5. And then, James was the second person in Lenox to own a camera. There he is with the camera. First, James took pictures of his family, then his classmates. Soon people from all over town were saying, you ready? Take a picture of me, James Van Der Zee. At home, James turned his closet into a darkroom and learned how to develop film. It wasn't easy to create photographs, but James loved his family. He loved his town and the people in it, so he always worked to make them look their best. Far away from Lenox, the world was changing. Many black families were leaving the segregated South to start new lives in the big northern towns like New York City. James was ready for an adventure. At age 18, he took his camera and moved to Harlem. Woo! Compared to Lenox, Harlem was big, fast, and exciting. James had to hold onto his hat to keep his head from spinning. There he is, holding his hat. And there's Harlem. After working as a pianist, a waiter, and an elevator operator, James finally got a job as an assistant photographer at a portrait studio in New Jersey. Many big city customers came to have their portraits taken. James couldn't wait to take their photographs, but his boss sent him straight to the darkroom. He said customers would not want their portrait taken by a black man. James did not like the way his boss took portraits. His boss shot the photographs too quickly. Sometimes the customers weren't even ready. Look, this gentleman here is surprised. In the dark room, James worked hard to make everyone look their best. One day, his boss left for vacation and put James in charge of the shop. James promised to take care of the business, but in his own way. Instead of rushing the customers, James talked to them. He found their natural smiles and the perfect backgrounds. James treated the customers like family. In the darkroom, James made their portraits look even better. He brightened people's eyes, straightened their teeth, and fixed their hair. He saw what was special in everyone and captured each person's story on film. When James' bosses returned, he found an entire line of customers saying, "Take a picture of me, James Van Der Zee." So James went back to New York and opened his very own portrait studio in Harlem, where the neighborhood was jumping with brand new music, art, books, and glamour. This cultural celebration was called the Harlem Renaissance. Just about everyone, politicians like Marcus Garvey, athletes like Joe Louis and the New York Black Yankees, and world-famous performers like Florence Mills, Bill Bojangles Robinson, and Mamie Smith wanted fancy portraits taken by James Van Der Zee. James photographed the rich and the poor, but mostly the middle class, and this distinguished him from many other photographers. At the time, photographs of black people were often sad and grim depictions of poor farm workers or struggling city dwellers. But when James stepped behind the camera, click, boom, everything changed. James used beautiful backgrounds, fancy props, and elegant clothing to help the people of his neighborhood look their best. In the darkroom, he fixed photographs and combined images to create perfect portraits. There he is with their photo in the darkroom. Even James's street photography captured the pride, beauty, and joy in Harlem. People all over the world proudly displayed James's photos in their homes, in their businesses, and close to their hearts. But the world was changing again. Cameras were now smaller and cheaper. People could take their own photographs. Soon, people stopped coming to James Van Der Zee's studio. James tried to keep working. He took passport photos, shooting tiny portraits that helped send folks on faraway adventures. Eventually, though, James had no choice but to put away his camera. Instead, he fixed up old photographs sent to him by people from around the world. Several years later, a visitor arrived at James's studio. The Metropolitan Museum of Art needed photographs for an exhibit on the history of Harlem. They found thousands of photos showing thousands of Harlem residents, all taken by James Vandersea. The exhibit was called Harlem on My Mind, and James's work was a huge hit. People said it was like walking through 40 years of history in Harlem. There's all of his work in the museum. The photographs showed the Harlem of families and churches, friends and clubs, neighbors and celebrities, the Harlem of love, pride, and community, the Harlem that James Vandersea always saw in his heart. And people came to say, you ready? "Take a picture of me, James Vandersea." So James stepped behind the camera once again. Click, click. The end. Okay. Our next book is called This is the Rope, A Story from the Great Migration by Jacqueline Woodson, illustrated by James Ransom. So this next book is a story about a little girl and her experience during the Great Migration, which was a time when more than 6 million African Americans left the unjust conditions of the South seeking better opportunities in the North. And this all took place between 1900 and about 1970. So we're going to see where this jump rope goes as she goes through her life. This is the rope my grandmother found beneath an old tree a long time ago, back home in South Carolina. This is the rope my grandfather used to tie the few things they owned to the top of the car that drove my grandmother, who was a mother now, from South Carolina all the way to a place called New York City. This is the rope my grandmother held tight to as my grandfather drove real slow past the people in big city buildings that seemed to go on and on. This is the rope my grandmother used to dry the sweet-smelling flowers she grew in the small window boxes, reminding her of the flowers back home, where the land, she said, went on and on. This is the rope my grandfather strung so that my mama's diapers could blow dry in the hot city breeze. And this is the rope my mama tied around a small ducky's neck, then pulled it along singing, "Quack, quack, quack." This is the rope my mama held out to the girls on the block, her new Brooklyn block, a home of their own that they finally owned. Mama asked shyly, "Anybody want to play?" They did. This is the rope my mama first tripped on as she sang with her friends. "Miss Lucy had a baby, she named him Tiny Tim." Jump rope song. This is the rope Mama's brother took from her room for some crazy game that little boys play. There's his shadow. There he is with the rope. This is the rope my mama found again 10 years later when my grandfather said, "We need a bit of rope to tie these things down inside this here car like that rope we used to have from back home." Then he drove my mama off to college far away from the city, while up at the window my grandmother waved. Here's a grandmother. Here's the rope. And here's the grandpa. This is the rope my mama placed on the piano around family photos, and me just a baby, and then a bit bigger, already reaching for it. This is the rope my daddy used when he showed me how to tie a sailor's knot 2 times around and pull it real tight. You want whatever you make or do in your life, my daddy said, to last. So here are all those family photos. And here's that rope. This is the rope my mama turned as she waved to my daddy and taught me to sing the Miss Lucy song on our sidewalk right here in Brooklyn just last Friday night. Same rope. But now the little girl is a woman, and that's her daughter with the rope. This is the rope that held up the sign saying, "We are all family," at our picnic reunion in the big park up the street from our home. This is the rope, threadbare and graying, that I traded with Grandma for a brand new one. Then I jumped a new rope. My name is Beatrice. I come from Brooklyn. As my family smiled proudly and the sun began setting, as Grandma held on to her rope from back home. And her long ago memory of sweet-smelling pine. The end. Okay. This book is called We March, and it's by Shane W. Evans. And if you see on the back here, this is, excuse me, in Washington, D.C., and on August 28th, 1963, more than 250,000 people gathered in Washington, D.C. To participate in the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And this is also the day that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Delivered his I Have a Dream speech. And so this next book is going to show that day through the eyes of a young boy. So let's see what happened on his day. The morning is quiet. See the people out? The sun is not up yet. The sun rises. And we prepare. Tying shoes, putting on a jacket to march. Looks like they're meeting at the church. We pray for strength. We work together. We're all painting signs. The sign says, "We want freedom." We come from all over to march. These buses are full of people. We follow our leaders. We walk together. Young and old, people of all different races. We sing. We are hot and tired, but we are filled with hope. We lean on each other. As we march to justice, to freedom, to our dreams. The end. Excuse me. So we're going to do one last book, which we can also sing together. It's called This Little Light of Mine, and this version is illustrated by E.B. Lewis. So, while you or me might not end up in a history book, you matter, and every day you can let your light shine through your words and through your actions. And that's what you'll see in these pictures. You'll see the little boy doing kind things for his family and his friends. So So here he is looking in the mirror at himself. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Won't let no one blow it out, I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let no one blow it out, I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let no one blow it out, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. The end. So thank you all for coming to Storytime today. It's time to say goodbye. My hands say thank you with a clap, clap, clap. My feet say thank you with a tap, tap, tap. Clap, 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 tap, tap, tap. We roll our hands and we wave goodbye. Goodbye, my friends, goodbye, my friends. I wish that we could stay. Goodbye, my friends, goodbye, my friends. Until another day, one more time. Goodbye, my friends, goodbye, my friends. I wish that we could stay. Goodbye, my friends, goodbye, my friends. Until another day. Bye-bye.